This is a continuation of Parashat Shalach. Then, if we were to caption Parashat Shalach and now compare Parashat Korach, we can say Shalach is the rebellion, that's how Rav Tzida would call it, the rebellion going up against God, going up against Eretz Yisrael. Here, in Parashat Korach, the rebellion that Korach is undertaking is against Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu. And against Aaron. And when Veikach Korach, and it says he took, but the Tanakh or the Chumash doesn't bother telling us what he took. So there are those that say, like Rashi, in the name of our sages, that he took himself aside to differ on Moshe and on Aaron. The audacity of a leader like Korach. In other words, Korach, he's a very influential person. He's a very important person. As some of you saw the lineage, Korach here is the son of Yitzhar. Yitzhar is son number 2 of Kehat. Korach's uncle called
which one?
For those that didn't do the task, we did this before you walked in. Korach's uncle is called Amram, that's right. Amram has benefited to have 2 sons in key positions. His first son is in which position? And Moshe is in? Pseudo-king. We learned at the end of Parashat Bamidbar, for those latecomers that didn't see, that the Nasi of all Bnei Kahat is Elitzaphan, from which son number of Kahat? Number 4, the last son, called Uziel. In Chazal, Kahat, we see Midrashim that he's basically saying, I'm the one that deserves either or. I'm the one that deserves either to be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, instead of Aaron. Didn't Amram's son already get a high task? That's Moshe. Or if not that, I'm in line to be the Nasi, the prince of all of the family of Kehat, overseeing all the work done in the Mishkan, transporting the tabernacle, and so on and so forth. Rashi brings this as well in the name of our sages. He says, look, I come from son number 2. Why should son number 4, Uziel, why should his son have such a high position? My dear friends, had anyone stood up in Midbar Sinai, where 1 year, less 10 days, after Chet HaEgel, after Moshe's efforts to pray for Slicha on the sin of the golden calf, the man is coming down every day, 6 days a week. The water is provided for us. The cloud is over us. No one would open up his mouth against Moshe Rabbeinu. If someone would say something against Moshe Rabbeinu, intifada. People would start,
Fold up.
People would start what? Throwing things at others. You're going up against Moshe Rabbeinu? How can you dare do such a thing? Yes or no? Ramban says it can't be happening there. The likelihood is that it's happening now, a direct continuation of our parsha. Thank you, from the town called Kadesh Barnea, the sin of the spies envelops. Before the sin of the spies, when we started traveling, we had the section of those that are just looking for complaints, the mitonim. And then we had the asafsuf, asking for meat. And there at Kivrota Ta'ava, people died. Fire came down and killed people at the edge of the Machaneh. All that led to the episode of Miriam in Chatzerot. Miriam becomes a Mitzora'at. She's afflicted there. The nation delays itself for how many days? 7 days. And then we travel to Kadesh Barnea. And then, for the life of us, a terrible thing happens. The sin of the spies. The entire generation is now doomed. Everyone 20 years old and above is convicted, is going to be executed, he's going to die, and he's not going to go into the land of Israel. Everyone, 20 and above, except for Yoshua and Caleb, the Leviim and the women of Israel. Are you disgruntled? Are you despaired? Huh? You have a very gloomy tomorrow? Yes? Now, if you're an opportunist, and if you're also demagogic, like Korach, if we read Midrashei Chazal, we'll see how demagogic he is. We'll see how he's trying to take advantage of the opportunity to accuse Moshe basically as if Moshe appointed Aaron to become the Kohen Gadol. Like he called it a nepotism matter. And of course we know that the choice of Aaron HaKohen is the choice of Hashem. The choice of Elitzaphan, the son of the fourth son of Kehat, okay, is not the choice of Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, Korach, who's very wealthy in resources, the Midrash tells us, he's also a very influential person. And therefore uses his orators, his expressions. He's very influential. And he meets up with Datan and Aviram. Korach is saying, I want it the Kohen Gadol. On the outside, he's portraying as if he wants more Kedusha. Datan and Aviram, however, we know them in the past, in Chazal, that they are troublemakers. Datan and Aviram, are from the tribe of Reuven. Do you remember the camp of Israel? How many sides to the camp of Israel?
4 sides.
Yehuda, up east. Down west, the tribe of Machon. No. Who? Ephraim. No, down west. Down west. East, west. Yehuda up on top, Ephraim to the west. To the left side of the camp, which is south, is led by the camp of Reuven. Let's go to the inner camp. Who's sitting and living around the camp of the Shekhinah? The tribe of the Leviim. On one side, on the south side of the Mishkan, is which family and their wives and kids? Kehat. Chazal say, Rashi brings it, quote, Oy l'rasha, oy l'shchina. I repeat, Oy l'rasha, oy l'shchina. Woe to the wicked, and woe to the neighbors. The shchino to his neighbor. Who's wicked? Who's the neighbor? Kehat. Who in Kehat? Korach. Oy to the wicked, oy to the neighbors. Oy l'shchonel, his neighbor. Datan and Aviram, you can say they're Rashaim as well. They're the ones that did bad things according to Chazal against Moshe. They're the ones that let the words out that Moshe is the one that, what did he do in Mitzrayim? He killed the Mitzri and he buried him in the sand. Right, remember? That's the Datan and Aviram are troublemakers. They don't give respect, to say the least. And therefore, they have selfish motives. The truth is, on the inside, Korach also has a selfish motive. He thinks he deserves such a high position. So we've discussed Korach, who's looking and going up against Moshe, rebellion against Moshe. We're now discussing Datan and Aviram. Their motives are even different. They're just troublemakers. But let's briefly talk about 250 people. These 250 people, many say that they are Bechorim, that they are the firstborn. Okay? And many say that they're very hungry for spirituality. Many explain, like the Netziv of Volozhin, they were really the heads of the Sanhedrin. These 250 people were heads of the highest of courts of Israel, and they saw their ability not to be serving God, their ability not to be Kohanim and serving God is something burning in their inner beings, because they saw the Kahuna as a method, as a way to get to the love of God, to get to the cleaving on to God, not for the sake of authority, not for the sake of power, not for the sake of honor, like who? Korach, deep down inside, he's greedy. He is a terrible person. He's looking for authority. He's looking for honor. This point that Korach is full of jealousy, envy. He's greedy. He wants power and authority. But on the outside, he's playing, I'm holy, I'm special. And the 250 and the Tan and Avram are all different. We want to prove this point from two different points. One, the oral Torah, and the second, the written Torah. Are you aware of the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avot regarding a machloket l'shem shamayim? Has anyone come across that Mishnah? What is a difference of opinion for the sake of heaven? Do you remember that Mishnah? You study Pirkei Avot, I'm sure. You read it sometimes on Shabbos in the afternoon. Beautiful. Thank you, Hirsch. Kol machloket shehi l'shem shamayim, every difference that is really for the sake of heaven, the Mishnah says that machloket will sustain itself. That machloket will continue. A difference of opinion, a difference of understanding. And the Mishnah titles an example, Hirsch. What did you say? Who is the example of a machloket l'shem shamayim? Who is it? Hillel and Shammai. Okay, very good. The machloket for the sake of heaven is l'shem shamayim. L'shem shamayim. 1 second, let me just find the right place that I wanted to quote. Excuse me. Okay. Here it is. Kol machloket shehi l'shem shamayim sofa litkayem. In the end, it will sustain itself, exist. And then the Mishnah says, v'she'ena l'shem shamayim. A machloket which is not l'shem shamayim for the sake of heaven. Ein sofa litkayem. It will not exist. It will not sustain itself. Because it's based on personal, selfish motives. Then the Mishnah rhetorically asks, which machloket is l'shem shamayim? Like her said, that's the machloket between Hillel, not the house, Hillel and Shammai. You should know there were very few differences of opinion in our oral Torah between Hillel and Shammai. If you learn that important sefer that I'm very much trying to advise you to study, the Rambam's intro to his commentary to the Mishnah, Hakdama lePerush Mishnah of the Rambam. We have a few copies here. And for those that are good in Hebrew, we have many upstairs. Use the Mossad Rav Kook edition. There are very few differences of opinion halacha between Hillel and Shammai. Where did it increase as time passed? The more the Galut extended, and the more we're forgetting oral Torah, then the more differences of opinion appear between the house, Beit Hillel, and Beit Shammai. What does Beit Hillel? What does Beit Hillel mean, Beit Shammai?
He's referring to disciplines.
These are academies, yeshivot, that stemmed from the hashkafa, the halachic hashkafa of Hillel and Shammai, and there are other hashkafot. These, as the generations came on, there were two main schools of thought. But as time proceeded, so too did the amount, the quantity of difference of opinion of halakha, did it generate more and more difference of opinion. Why? The longer we are in the galut, the longer, are they after us? Do we have to move? Can we not set a basic place to study Torah? When you're on the move, it's not the same thing. You don't have yeshuv hadat. Your mind is not settled. You can't serve your rabbis all the time. As the Galut extended, Rambam explains, there was a proliferation of the amount of differences of opinion in Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Let's get back to the Mishnah. I don't want to get off on a tangent. So the Mishnah rhetorically asks, which is the Machloket L'Shem Shammai, and talks about the difference of opinion between Hillel and Shammai. That will sustain itself. Why? It's for the sake of God. But for not L'Shem Shammai, what is the case, the example that the Mishnah gives, which is the difference of opinion, which is not for the sake of heaven? Korach and? You said three answers. Which one do you mean? Korach and? You thought it should say what? Korach and Aaron, or Korach and Moshe. But it says differently. Korach ve'adato. Korach and his team, his community, his people. Why doesn't it say that the machloket, which is not for the sake of heaven, is Korach against Moshe or Aaron? But it doesn't say that. Why not? The Malbim explains, one of the great later commentators, that, you know what? Korach, psik, kama. Datan Aviram, kama. And the 250 people, they all disagreed with one another. They all had different intentions. They would not come together and utilize their powers, their intentions to be one unified body, one unified thought or school or academy. Everyone is thinking for their own benefit. Yes, Korach is thinking of his own benefit. Datan and Aviram are looking for their own benefit, and so too the 250 people, they have their own benefit. The truth is, the 250 have truly a divine intention, but they're doing it the wrong way. So therefore, gentlemen, this machloket, as the Mishnah brings it in Pirkei Avot, in Pirkei Avot, chapter 5, Mishnah 17, says the machloket lo l'shem shamayim is Korach ve'adato, his Eidah. We see the word here several times. Why? Because they're really not interested in coming together. They're not doing it, not only they're not doing it l'shem shamayim, but right now we're seeing opportunism. According to the Ramban, we'll get back to that right now. There are people that are complaining. There are people that have made complaints a month ago, 2 months ago. Their claims, their charges are not being answered. They're really looking for greed. They're looking for authority. They're not satisfied what's happening. They know that they're about to die now, next year, the year after. They're now getting together, this group, to be what we call, a new Hebrew word, Moshe is very interested in, an oppositia. An opposition.
Where do we find this in the Tanakh?
Not in the Tanakh. The Eidah. This Eidah is Eidah Ra. It's a bad community. They're hoping to remove the authority. Who's the authority now here in Israel? Moshe and Aaron. And they have a big mistake. Can you imagine what will happen if Moshe and Aaron are indeed removed now? What do you think? I'm asking all of you, with your political understanding. What would happen now in Israeli society in the desert if Moshe and Aaron are zamped out of here? What do you think is going to happen?
Chaos.
That's exactly right. There's going to be chaos. They're going to feud. They're going to fight for authority. The machloket amongst them will even be greater because everyone is willing to exploit the other for his own benefit, for his own charges. Okay? And that's the machloket between Korach and his own people and his own Eidah. Okay? Nechama Leibovich, the great scholar of Israel in blessed memory, has a wonderful article. It's worth reading and spending time down below when she talks about this. She proves the point on the question we raised. When they make a point against Moshe and against Aaron, and they say all of the community, all of Kol Ha'edah Kulam Kedoshim. Kedoshim? The proper syntax here should have been the proper noun should have been Kulam Kedosha. Eidah Kedosha. And not Eidah Kedoshim. But she proves from here that everyone is individualistic here. Kulam Kedoshim. Everyone is interested in a different thing. Okay? They're not really holy and bringing unity, but everyone here has his own argument, his own beef, his own claim. They're all Kedoshim, but they're not going to be unified together. Okay, so here we have the beginning of an understanding. We have Korach that's now rebelling, and now is the time, because remember, as the Ramban explains, this section, gentlemen, is not coming at Midbar Sinai. Because if it would be in Midbar Sinai, let's just remember ourselves. Hirsch, the date of the sin of the spies in Chazal, we saw it in Rashi. No. When do they come back? After 40 days and give their evil report and cry? Tisha B'Av, don't forget that. The 9th of Av, yes Hirsch? Tisha B'Av. Okay? They're sent maybe Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, 30 days in Tammuz or so, and 9 days or 10 days in Av is 40 days. It can't be 2 months earlier when we're in ER, not yet leaving. Everything is wonderful. We got a slicha from Moshe Rabbeinu for the sin of the golden calf, and now we started moving. And once we started moving, problems. The Mitonanim, the Asafsuf, the leprosy of Miriam, and now the sending of the spies. Now, here we have people that are making a beef, right? Until now, Moshe Rabbeinu was accepted. Until now, Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for us. What happened now? A few days ago, perhaps, or a week ago, or a month ago, we don't know exactly how much time. Did Moshe Rabbeinu really pray for the slicha of the sin of the spies? Yes or no? How did we learn in depth last week? The prayer of Moshe Rabbeinu, was it identical to his prayer at the sin of the golden calf? No, it was not. He didn't ask for emet. He didn't ask for rachum v'chanun, that God is a merciful God. What did he ask for? Erech apayim. God's anger should be stretched out. He asked for installments. We use the word, right? Let have everyone pay the justice in installments, meaning not everyone should be killed right now. That was his prayer. If you do that, it's going to be a chilul Hashem. But he didn't ask for slicha, because there is no slicha. To talk bad about the land of Israel, that's our very existence as a nation. We can't exist. The Torah cannot exist unless we're going to be in the land of Israel. There is no tshuva. There's no repentance for that. Justice has to come. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu was clever in understanding to ask for erech apayim. Some of you say it in the prelude to the Tachanun, in the Shacharit, or as well in the Mincha service as well. So now, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't even pray for slicha. Now is the time. Korach is an opportunist. The Ramban explains. Okay? He's going to now specifically rebel against Moshe. And the nation will not show opposition to such a thing. Remember, we've seen so much judgment. People being burned, dying in Kivrot HaTa'ava. And now the Chet HaMeraglim, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't pray for our behalf. And everyone is doomed to die right now in the desert. Right now, if I were to interview you, Russell, for Sinai Desert News or Paran Desert News, how do you feel that you know you're going to be dying within the next 40 years? Not too good. Embittered, I would assume. Embittered. Now is the time to catch support of chief people like Datan and Aviram, like 250 leaders. And let's continue in our study, unless there's another question. Okay? I think we have enough to answer. I'm sorry, I apologize. Enough to answer some of the questions on this page, like questions number 3, 4. Okay, how would you answer Korach number 5? How would you answer Korach, huh? What would you say to him? So first, like you said, Moshe, he just falls on his face. Huh?
Yes.
Excuse me? Who did Korach, Datan, and Aviram in 250 address? Everyone agrees?
No, it says Moshe heard about
Can you turn this around a little to the side?
Vayishma Moshe.
Who did they address in their complaint? No. It says that they addressed who? They went up against Moshe and Aaron. So what should be the reply? Vayishma Moshe? It should say Vayishmeu Moshe and Aaron. And therefore your question, your legitimate question is what? Moshe, Aaron doesn't say anything. Who has an obvious answer? Who has an obvious answer?
Korach wanted to take this position. So
Therefore, why doesn't Aaron answer? It was given to me by God through Moshe Rabbeinu. Why doesn't he answer?
It's the same argument. You can't use that argument. If you go against what Moses says, and saying that Moses gave a position doesn't.
because even Aaron understand it.
Why is Aaron silent? Yes?
Because if he says something, it looks like it's coming from him.
Beautiful. Aaron purposely was quiet because he has a nigya b'davar. It's affecting him. He doesn't want to show that he has what? A personal interest here in this matter. And therefore, silence is golden, right? What did Chazal say? Siyag l'chokhmah shtika. Pirkei Avot. A fence or border of wisdom is